The last thing you expect at 37,000 feet isn't a bump, it's the sound of the sky tearing itself apart. For 200 souls aboard Trans-Pacific Flight 227, a state-of-the-art Airbus A350, that sound was the beginning of the end. With the pilots losing control and the aircraft bleeding altitude, two F-22 Raptors scrambled to intercept, breaking radio silence with a single word that changed the fate of everyone on board: Phoenix. The legend, it turned out, wasn't in a top-secret hangar. She was in seat 31A, flying coach all along. The coffee was lukewarm and tasted like disappointment, but Captain Anya Sharma drank it anyway. A bitter ritual. She sat in seat 31A of Trans-Pacific Flight 227, a gleaming Airbus A350 hurtling from San Francisco to a much-needed vacation in Tokyo. Her laptop, a government-issue block of encrypted metal, lay dormant on her tray table. Outside the reinforced window, the Pacific was a vast, indifferent blue, veiled by a blanket of clouds, 37,000 feet below. We've all been there, right? Anonymous in a crowd, just another face. That's all she was today. No one here knew her name, and certainly not her call sign. The businessman next to her was already asleep, his tie slightly askew, a faint snore escaping his lips. Across the aisle, a teenager was engrossed in some superhero movie, the explosions flashing silently on her screen. The cabin crew moved with a practiced, almost robotic grace, their smiles perfectly calibrated. It was all so crushingly normal. Anya closed her eyes, trying to force the tension from her shoulders. All she could see were the glowing displays of the simulator at Edwards Air Force Base. 12 straight hours just last week, wrestling with the flight control software for a next-generation stealth fighter. A machine so secret its designation was still just a string of numbers and letters. It was work that lived in the shadows, work that chewed up pilots and spit them out, work that only 3 people in the entire United States were qualified to do. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment, letting us know where you're watching from. Now back to our story. Her call sign was Phoenix. She'd earned it 7 years ago, dragging an F-35 out of a terminal flat spin that the onboard computer had already written off as a fatal error. 3 hydraulic systems had bled out, the jet was bucking like a wild animal, and the computer had calculated a 0% chance of survival. She'd put it down on the runway anyway, a little rough but in one piece. Since that day, she'd flown aircraft that didn't officially exist, pushed them to the very edge of their performance envelopes and beyond, and brought them home every single time. Her official file was a thick volume of commendations, 2 distinguished flying crosses, and enough classified addendums to make a spy novel blush. They'd offered her a quiet retirement last year, a full pension, and a handshake. She said no, but today she was just Anya, jeans, a worn gray hoodie. Her military ID was buried deep in her wallet, a ghost she was trying to outrun for 2 weeks. She craved the anonymity of Tokyo's crowded streets. She just wanted to be normal. The universe, it seemed, had a twisted sense of humor. The explosion wasn't a bang, it was a physical blow, a violent gut punch that slammed the A350 hard to the right. A sound like a freight train derailing inside a tunnel ripped through the cabin. The floor dropped away, and for a terrifying half-second, everyone was weightless. Then gravity reasserted itself with a vengeance. Oxygen masks rained down, swinging on their yellow tubes like a gallery of screaming faces. The cabin erupted into a symphony of shrieks and prayers. Anya's training slammed into place before the first scream had even finished. It wasn't a conscious thought. It was pure, conditioned reflex. Her eyes, wide and analytical, darted around the cabin. The aircraft was in a steep right bank, the nose pitching down. That sound, the vibration shivering up through the floor, it wasn't just an engine failure. Something was fundamentally broken. The left engine was screaming, a high-pitched whine of overcompensation. The right one was a gaping, terrifying silence. She snapped her seatbelt open and rose, her body automatically adjusting to the canted floor. Passengers fumbled with their masks, their faces a mask of pure terror. A child's cry pierced the chaos from somewhere up front. The flight attendants, faces ghost white but their voices steady, were trying to maintain order, bracing themselves against the lurching of the plane. Anya moved toward the cockpit, a salmon swimming against a current of fear. Every rule book, every protocol screamed at her to sit down. But the pilot in her, the part of her that understood the dying screams of an aircraft, knew better. They'd lost the number 2 engine, no doubt. But the sickening, sluggish way the plane was responding to something, the pilots were fighting a losing battle. She reached the cockpit door. A flight attendant, a young woman with terror in her eyes, but steel in her smile, blocked her. "Ma'am, you need to return to your seat now," she yelled over the engine's scream. "I'm a pilot," Anya said, her voice a blade of calm in the storm. "United States Air Force. I need to talk to the captain." The flight attendant hesitated, a flicker of indecision in her eyes. Yes, but there were rules. Just then the A350 shuddered violently, a deep groan of tortured metal that felt like the plane's very soul was tearing. "Please," Anya insisted, locking eyes with her, "I can help them." That was the moment that changed everything. The flight attendant made a snap decision, grabbing the intercom. A few frantic words, a tense silence that stretched for an eternity. Then, the lock on the cockpit door clicked open. The scene inside was controlled chaos. Captain Marcus Thorne, a veteran with silvering hair, was wrestling with the yoke, his knuckles white, sweat beading on his brow. In the right seat, First Officer Lena Petrova was a blur of motion, one hand assisting on her own yoke, the other frantically trying to raise someone on the radio. "Mayday, mayday, mayday!" Lena's voice was strained but clear. "Trans-Pacific 227, we have an uncontained failure of the number 2 engine, multiple cascading system failures. We are—" Anya stepped into the breach. "Captain, I'm Colonel Anya Sharma, Air Force. I'm a test pilot. I think I know what's happening." Thorne glanced at her for a single critical second. In that instant, he saw not a panicked passenger, but a professional. He saw the unnerving calm in her eyes, the way she stood perfectly balanced against the plane's sickening tilt. He made a choice. "Right engine disintegrated 2 minutes ago," he grunted, the words tight with strain. "Took out primary and secondary hydraulics. Flight controls are mush. We're dropping 500 feet a minute, and I can't arrest the descent." Anya's eyes devoured the instrument panel. It was even worse than she'd imagined. The primary flight display showed them in a spiraling descent. A constellation of warning lights blinked accusingly. Hydraulics, flight controls, electrical bus failure, a Christmas tree from hell. "What's your current weight?" she asked, her voice cutting through the noise. 270,000 pounds, Thorne shot back. "We've been airborne for 2 hours, still heavy as a tank. Nearest viable runway? 600 miles to Honolulu. We'll never make it. The controls are getting worse." Anya's mind was a supercomputer, running probabilities and scenarios. She'd flown jets with more extensive damage. Yes, but those were nimble fighters built to be abused. This was a massive, elegant airliner, a bus with wings, carrying 200 innocent souls. The solutions she knew were radical, classified, and profoundly dangerous. She made her own choice. "Captain," she began, her voice steady, "I'm going to talk you through an alternative control law. It's an experimental protocol we use when a test vehicle is severely compromised. It is not in any civilian manual on Earth, but it will give you back your airplane." Thorne stared at her. "How experimental?" "Very. Will it save my passengers?" "Yes." "Then I don't give a damn. Tell us what to do." Anya pulled out her phone, her fingers flying across the calculator app, running complex aerodynamic equations. Thorne and Petrova watched, their own fight with the dying aircraft continuing unabated. "Okay," Anya said after a moment. "Here's the problem. When the engine blew, it severed your main hydraulic lines. You're running on a tertiary backup system that's screaming for mercy. The flight computer is trying to help, but its programming can't comprehend this level of damage. It's actually making things worse." "So what's the move?" Lena asked, her voice tight. "We trick the plane," Anya said. "We go old school, full manual. Use input, but we'll use differential thrust and aerodynamic pressure as virtual flight surfaces." Thorne shook his head. "I've been playing with the thrust. It's like trying to steer a battleship with a canoe paddle." "You're doing it wrong," Anya stated, not unkindly. She moved to the center console. "May I?" Thorne gave a curt nod. Anya's hands closed over the left engine's thrust lever. "This is a technique we developed for the X-37 program," she explained. "We found you can create a stable pressure differential by pulsing the thrust in a very specific asymmetric pattern." She began to move the lever, not in a smooth motion, but in a series of tiny rhythmic jolts. Forward 5%, back 3, forward 4, back 2. To the untrained eye, it was random, but it was a precise, calculated dance. She was creating microbursts of thrust, sending tiny shock waves over the wing that the struggling ailerons and rudder could bite into. The effect was almost immediate. The heavy right wing began to lift. The terrifying descent slowed. "What in God's name?" Thorne breathed. "The pulses act like a virtual aileron," Anya explained, her hand a blur of motion. "It creates pockets of high and low pressure that the plane can use to stabilize itself. But the rhythm is everything. Too fast, you get oscillations. Too slow, you lose the effect." She demonstrated for another 30 seconds, the A350 slowly, miraculously, clawing its way back to a semblance of level flight. The descent rate eased from 500 feet per minute to 100. "Can you keep that up for 600 miles?" Thorne asked, a note of awe in his voice. "No," Anya said bluntly. "My arm would fall off. But you can. Both of you." For the next 10 minutes, under the halo of the emergency cockpit lights, Anya became an instructor. It was brutal, counterintuitive work. Thorne's first attempts were clumsy, inducing a sickening wobble. No, and for a terrifying moment, they lost another 100 feet. But Lena got it. Her inputs were smoother, her feel for the rhythm more innate. "That's it," Anya encouraged her. "Feel that pattern. You've got it." Lena nodded, her brow furrowed in concentration, her hand a mirror of Anya's earlier movements. Anya glanced at the fuel display. "Another problem. How much fuel are we sitting on?" 60,000 pounds, Thorne said. "Far too heavy to attempt a landing." "Can we dump it?" "Negative. The dump valves are on the fried hydraulic systems. If we tried to divert power, we could lose what little control we have left." A near miss. Anya's mind raced. What if they didn't dump it but burned it? We run the left engine at a higher thrust setting. Thorne saw the logic. That'll burn it off, but it'll also push us toward Honolulu faster. We'll get there before we're light enough to land. "So we don't fly straight," Anya countered. "We put ourselves in a holding pattern. 100 miles out, we fly in giant circles, burning fuel until we hit our landing weight." "Hours of this?" Lena asked, her voice already strained from the effort of maintaining the thrust pattern. "I'll take over when you're tired," Anya promised. "We'll rotate shifts. We can do this." Thorne looked from Anya's determined face to Lena's steady hand and made the call. "All right, let's do it." He keyed the radio. "Honolulu Center, Trans-Pacific 227. Meanwhile, at Hickam Air Force Base, a radar operator was staring at his screen, his coffee forgotten. Flight 227 was a wounded bird, bleeding altitude, its flight path marked by a strange, rhythmic wobble. He picked up a red phone. "Get me the battle commander." Within 5 minutes, two F-22 Raptors tore through the sky, their afterburners leaving incandescent trails. Call signs Viper 1 and Viper 2. They were armed to the teeth, not for the airliner, but because they'd been on 5-minute alert. Major Jackson Viper Cole led the flight. He'd seen combat over deserts and mountains, but this, nursing a crippled passenger jet, was a new and unwelcome challenge. Viper Flight, you have the intercept on 227, the controller's voice crackled. Maintain 1,000 feet separation. I need a visual assessment. Viper 1 copies, Jackson replied. The Raptors sliced through the air, closing the 100-mile gap in minutes. Jackson eased back on the throttle as the massive A350 materialized from the haze. Viper 2, take high cover. I'm moving in. 2's high. Jackson maneuvered his F-22 with surgical precision, sliding up alongside the airliner. He was close enough to see the pale, upturned faces of passengers pressed against the windows, some of them holding up cell phones. His gaze shifted to the right wing. It was a mess. The engine cowling was shredded, exposing the mangled turbine blades within. A fine mist of hydraulic fluid trailed from the wing root like a ghostly banner. He watched as the airliner yawed, then corrected, then yawed again. The pattern, it was deliberate, rhythmic. Honolulu Center, Viper 1, Jackson transmitted. I have eyes on 227. Confirm catastrophic failure on engine 2. There's a significant hydraulic leak. Aircraft is unstable, but it appears to be under some form of controlled rhythmic stabilization. Pilot workload looks extremely high. Viper 1, roger that. 227, be advised you have an F-22 escort off your right wing. Inside the A350's cockpit, Lena managed a weak smile. Well, at least we have company. Anya looked out the window. The F-22 was a thing of brutalist beauty, a gray diamond hanging in the air beside them. She could see the pilot's helmeted head. She knew that machine. She'd flown it 47 times. She'd helped write the damn flight manual. An idea, audacious and desperate, sparked in her mind. Captain, she said to Thorne, can you get me on a military channel to that fighter? Thorne looked at her, his curiosity piqued. Why? Because he's our best chance, but I need to speak to him pilot to pilot. Thorne didn't hesitate. He flipped a switch, patching them through. Viper 1, this is Trans-Pacific 227. I have a passenger on board who needs to speak with you. She's military. She says it's critical. In his cockpit, Jackson Cole frowned. This was a violation of about a dozen protocols. But what about this situation wasn't? Go ahead, 227. Anya took the microphone, her knuckles white. She was about to step out of the shadows. Viper 1, this is Colonel Anya Sharma, United States Air Force. Test Pilot Edwards. My call sign is Phoenix. Authentication code Sierra 4 Alpha Kilo November. I'm a passenger on this aircraft and am currently serving in an advisory capacity. Silence. In the F-22, Jackson Cole's blood ran cold. He knew the name. Every fighter pilot in the world knew the name. Phoenix. The ghost pilot. The one who flew the Black Projects, the legend. Phoenix. Viper 1, he stammered, his voice instantly shifting from professional to reverent. Authentication valid, ma'am. How can Viper Flight assist? Viper 1, we're employing a classified alternative control protocol to maintain flight with critical hydraulic failure. Pilot fatigue is going to be our biggest enemy. I need a favor. Name it, ma'am. Get a secure line to Edwards. I need Colonel Peterson in the X-37 office. Tell him Phoenix requests emergency tactical escort authorization and verbal flight profile assistance. He'll know what that means. Jackson was already on it. Hickam Command, Viper 1 with a Priority 1 request. Get me a secure patch to Edwards, X-37 Program Director, Colonel Peterson. The connection took 2 agonizing minutes. When Peterson's gruff voice came on the line, Jackson relayed Anya's message verbatim. A 10-second pause felt like an hour. Then Peterson's voice, firm and resolute. Authorization granted. Tell Phoenix we're pushing the refined flight profile data to her mobile device now. Encryption key is her service number plus her mother's birthday. And Jackson, tell her we're damn proud of her." Jackson switched back. "Phoenix, Viper 1, you're green. Data packages inbound. Colonel Peterson sends his regards." Anya felt her phone vibrate. She unlocked the encrypted file. It was a waterfall of data, charts, performance curves, refined thrust patterns specifically modeled for an A350 in this exact failure state. It was the key. She studied it for 3 minutes, absorbing every detail, while Lena heroically maintained the original, cruder pattern. "Okay," Anya announced. "I've got a new rhythm for us. This one's going to smooth things out." She guided Lena through the more complex sequence. It involved not just the thrust lever, but coordinated micro-inputs on the rudder pedals. It was a three-dimensional chess game played at 500 miles per hour. But it worked. The plane settled. The oscillations vanished. The A350 flew as if it were on rails. Thorne let out a long, shuddering breath. "My God!" They flew their giant, looping circles in the sky, a wounded behemoth guarded by angels of war. The sun crept across the heavens. Inside the cabin, a fragile calm had descended. The presence of the fighters outside the windows was, paradoxically, a comfort, a sign that they weren't alone. Anya, Thorne, and Lena fell into a grueling rotation on the controls. 30 minutes on, an hour off. It was mentally and physically exhausting, a marathon of concentration. Viper 1 remained glued to their wing, a silent, watchful guardian. "Viper 2, Jackson said to his wingman over a private channel. "You know who Phoenix is?" "Negative, lead. She's not just a pilot, she's a force of nature. She's forgotten more about aerodynamics than we'll ever know, and right now she's sitting in coach on that flying brick, saving 200 people with secrets that won't be declassified for a decade. Damn. Yeah, damn." Back in the cockpit, Anya took her turn on the controls. Her shoulder was a knot of fire, but her hand was rock steady. Every test flight, every emergency simulation, every line of code she'd ever studied had been leading to this moment. An hour bled into 2. The fuel gauges crept lower. The plane grew lighter, more manageable. 220,000 pounds, Thorne announced. "Another hour, maybe less, and we'll be in the window for landing." "How's the backup hydraulic system?" Anya asked. "Temperature's high, but it's holding steady." A flight attendant, Rachel, appeared at the door. "They're scared," she reported, "but they're holding it together. Seeing your escorts out there, it helps." "Good," Thorne nodded. "Tell them we'll be on the ground in 90 minutes. Tell them we've got this." Rachel left. Anya looked at Lena, whose face was pale with exhaustion. "How you doing?" Lena offered a tired smile. "I think I've aged 10 years in the last 2 hours. But we're going to land this thing, right?" "Yes," Anya said, her voice filled with a certainty that was absolute. "We are." 3 hours after the sky tore open, Trans-Pacific Flight 227 was on final approach. They were at 190,000 pounds, still overweight, but it was the best they could do. Honolulu International was a ghost town, all other traffic diverted. The runway was framed by a sea of flashing red and blue lights. Thorne was at the controls. Anya stood behind him, a human backup system. Lena was calling out their numbers, a steady metronome of data. The F-22s had moved, now flying formation, off each wingtip, close enough to feel like extensions of the plane itself. 227, Viper 1, Jackson's voice came over the radio. "We're with you all the way. You got this." "Thanks for the babysitting, Viper," Thorne replied, a hint of gallows humor in his voice. Anya's eyes were glued to the instruments. There would be no go-around, no second chances. This was it. 10 miles, Lena called. "Speed 200 knots. On the glide slope." Thorne's grip was a deathlock on the yoke. He was a phenomenal pilot, but this was beyond anything he'd ever faced. Captain, Anya said, her voice soft. Breathe. Let the plane fly. Don't fight it. Thorne visibly forced his hands to relax. The aircraft seemed to sigh in relief, settling into the approach. 5 miles, 180 knots, still on slope. The runway lights grew brighter, a welcoming path in the encroaching twilight. 3 miles, 160 on slope. Anya leaned forward. At 1 mile, pull thrust to 70%. Let it settle. When you're sure you have the runway made, pull to idle and flare. Got it. 1 mile, 150, on slope. Thorne eased the thrust back. The plane sank, and he countered with a gentle pull on the yoke. A crosswind suddenly tried to push them left, a last, desperate attempt by the universe to win. Thorne corrected with a touch of rudder, his jaw set. Half mile, 140. The runway was a vast river of concrete rushing up to meet them. Runway made, Lena confirmed. Thorne chopped the power to idle. The A350 dropped. He pulled back, flaring, lifting the nose just as the main gear kissed the tarmac with a solid, reassuring thud. The plane skipped once, then settled. Thorne deployed the speed brakes and applied reverse thrust on their single good engine, carefully steering the massive jet down the center line. 100 knots, 80, 60. They rolled to a stop 2/3 of the way down the runway. For a moment, the only sound in the cockpit was the frantic ticking of cooling machinery. Then, from the cabin, a wave of sound washed over them. Applause, cheers, sobbing. Thorne and Lena just stared at each other, their faces etched with disbelief and profound relief. Anya allowed herself a small, tight smile. "That's how you do it, Captain." Thorne let out a laugh that was half a sob. "Couldn't have done it without you, Colonel." High above, the 2 F-22s performed a steep, climbing victory roll before banking back toward Hickam. "Viper 1 to Phoenix," Jackson's voice crackled, full of emotion. "That was one for the books. It was an honor flying with you." "The honor was all mine, Viper," Anya replied. The next 6 hours were a chaotic blur. Paramedics, FAA investigators, NTSB suits, military intelligence. Anya gave statement after statement explaining the physics, detailing the protocol. The media, of course, got the story. The Angel in 31A. She tried to dodge the cameras, but the Air Force insisted on a single press conference. She sat there, exhausted, still in her jeans and hoodie. "Captain Sharma," a reporter asked, "people are calling you a hero." "I'm not," she said, her voice flat. "I was a pilot with a specific skill set in the right place at the right time. Captain Thorne and First Officer Petrova are the heroes. They flew a broken airplane for 3 hours and didn't flinch. But the classified techniques, I was authorized by my command to use any and all means necessary in a life-threatening emergency. Proper protocols were followed." "Will these techniques be taught to civilian pilots now?" Anya paused, considering. "I hope so. Today proved that there are ways to save an aircraft we once thought were lost causes. That knowledge shouldn't belong to just a few of us." Another reporter chimed in. "What was going through your mind up there?" "Honestly, the math. I was focused on the problem. The fear. That comes later." The investigation ultimately traced the failure to a microscopic flaw in a turbine blade. An immediate airworthiness directive was issued. Thorne and Petrova were given the highest civilian airmanship awards. Anya received her 3rd Distinguished Flying Cross in a quiet ceremony at Edwards. Colonel Peterson pinned it on her uniform himself. "You did good, Phoenix. Just doing my job, sir." "No," Peterson said, his voice serious. "You did more. You validated everything we do here. 200 people are alive today because of theories you helped prove in a simulator 5 years ago." The biggest change, however, was quiet and systemic. The FAA, in a joint venture with the Air Force, created a new advanced training module for airline pilots. They called it the Phoenix Program. Anya herself helped design the curriculum. She taught the first class. 25 veteran captains sat in rapt attention as she diagrammed differential thrust vectors on a whiteboard. "This isn't a magic trick," she told them. "It's physics, and it will feel wrong every second you're doing it. But it works. And one day, it might be the only thing that gets you home." After the class, a young Delta pilot named Marcus approached her. "Colonel," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "my little girl turns 4 next month. What you're teaching us, it's the tool I need to make sure I get home for her 5th birthday and her 6th. Thank you." Anya just shook his hand. "Stay safe." The story of Trans-Pacific 227 became legend. Jackson Viper Cole and Anya kept in touch, grabbing coffee when they were on the same coast. "I still don't get it," he told her once. "That calm, where does it come from?" "Training," she said, but mostly trust. Trust in the math. I knew it would work because I'd seen the numbers. I'd tested the theory until it wasn't a theory anymore." "You never get scared?" "Every single flight," she admitted. "Fear is a tool. It keeps you from getting complacent. The secret is to use it, not let it use you." Anya continued her work in the shadows, flying machines that would define the future of air combat. But her proudest achievement remained Flight 227, not for the medal, but for the number, 200. 200 stories that didn't end prematurely over the Pacific. She kept a photo on her desk, the A350, safe on the runway at Honolulu, surrounded by flashing lights, a reminder. 3 years later, Lieutenant Colonel Sharma was asked to speak at the opening of a new exhibit at the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum. Standing among the titans of aviation history, a 10-year-old girl approached her. "Are you Phoenix?" the girl whispered. "I am," Anya smiled. "I read about you. You saved everyone." "I had help," Anya corrected gently, "but you were the one who wasn't scared." Anya knelt down. "Can I tell you a secret? I was terrified. Being brave isn't about not being scared. It's about doing what has to be done while you're scared." "I want to be a pilot someday," the girl declared. "Then learn your math," Anya said, "and never stop asking, what if?" That night in her hotel room, an email was waiting for her from Lena Petrova. The subject, "Thank you again." The message was simple. "I just got my certification as a line check airman. The first thing I'll be teaching new captains is the Phoenix Protocol. You didn't just save a plane that day, you changed the way we fly. Thank you." Anya closed the laptop. She thought about the call sign they'd given her, the mythical bird reborn from ashes. She finally understood. It wasn't about surviving one impossible moment. It was about all the moments after. It was about rising every single day to face the unknown and find a way through. It was about making sure others could rise too. Tomorrow she would be back at Edwards, pushing another machine to its breaking point. But tonight, she was just Anya, and somewhere out there, 200 people were sleeping safely in their beds. And that, she thought, was more than enough. Make sure to subscribe to Skybound Stories and check out our other amazing stories by clicking the videos on your screen right now.